I have measured a great deal of land in my life. I have set chain across frozen creek beds and desert hardpan and the steep-sided draws of the broken rim country, where the rock argues with every stake you try to drive. I know how land lies. I know when a line has been drawn true and when it has been drawn to suit someone other than the land itself. The mandate that sent me east of the Coldwater in the autumn of 1883 was the fourth such mandate the county had issued on the same boundary dispute in 3 years. I knew what that meant before I saddled my horse. The Harrow Land Combine had money in the county surveyor's office, the way water has weight. You couldn't measure one without feeling the other. 3 surveyors before me had ridden into the broken rim, spent a day or two, and filed boundary reports that moved the legal line 3/4 of a mile north of where the original land grant put it. 3/4 of a mile north stripped a Crow woman's grazing claim down to rock and shadow, and left the good grass to the Combine's winter pasture. I am not a brave man in the way men who carry guns are brave. I am careful. I keep records. I do not file what I am told to file. I file what my chain and my compass and my witness stakes say. I had not yet met Senna Birchwater when I made that decision. I want to be clear about that. I made it the same way I make every decision in the field, by looking at what is actually there. The broken rim country is high, dry, and honest. It does not pretend to be anything other than what it is. Ashbone Flats opens east of the Coldwater like a cupped hand, rimrock on 3 sides, winter grass pale and thick in the low ground, a spring-fed creek threading south along the base of the east wall. The original land grant put the boundary along the creek. Every piece of physical evidence I found in the first 3 days, the grant marker buried under 18 inches of silt 100 yards from the old line tree, the blazed corner post on the south rim, the witness tree notched in the 1860s and still standing, said the creek was the line. I was on my 3rd day of fieldwork when I saw her. She was moving a small band of horses along the creek bottom, riding a gray, wearing a blanket coat against the October cold. She did not stop when she saw me. She moved the horses through and let the gray pick its own way up the bank, while she watched me, with the particular attention of a person who has learned that strangers with surveying equipment are not a neutral presence on her land. I went back to my stakes. I was not going to explain myself to anyone before I had a complete field record. She came to my camp that evening on her own initiative. She did not ask my name or what I was doing. She looked at the field book open on my knee and said, "You are the 4th one." "I know," I said. She stood there a moment. The other 3 did not stay past 2 days. "I'll be here at least a week," I said. "The field record has to be complete, or it won't hold." She considered that. She had black hair going silver at the temples, and the kind of stillness that comes from making a great many decisions alone and being at peace with that. Her husband, Running Elk, had worked this land for 11 years before he died of a lung fever 2 winters prior. She had held it since. I learned these things gradually, over the days that followed, the way you learn the character of a piece of ground. A detail here, a detail there, the shape of a life emerging from what is actually present. She left without another word that first evening. I did not take it as hostility. I took it as a woman who had been given reasons not to trust surveyors and was reserving judgment. I stayed my week. I walked the east wall of the Ashbone Flats from the south rim marker to the creek junction and back, setting stakes and pulling chain measurements, and recording every monument I found. The old line tree on the creek's east bank had the original grant blaze, faded but legible. I pressed my thumbnail into the groove and read the date. 1861. No surveyor with eyes in his head could file a line 3/4 of a mile from that tree and call it honest work. The Combine's man arrived on the 5th day. His name was Crail, and he rode a good horse and wore a town coat in the field, which told me everything I needed to know about how much time he spent in fields. He watched me work for 20 minutes before he spoke. "You'll want to be careful about the monument interpretation," he said. "The previous reports all noted significant erosion of the original markers. I've found 6 monuments in good condition," I said, not looking up from the field book. "I'll note their condition in the record. The county surveyor is expecting a report consistent with the prior findings." I looked up then. "The county surveyor will get a report consistent with the field evidence," I said. "That's what he's paying me for." Crail stayed another hour, and then rode back toward town. I did not watch him go. I went back to my stakes. That evening, Senna came to my camp again and sat down on the far side of the fire without asking. I poured a second cup of coffee and set it where she could reach it. She considered the cup for a moment before picking it up. "He will make trouble at the county office," she said. "He'll try," I said. She looked at me across the fire with the level, measuring attention she gave most things. "Why does it matter to you? You do not own this land." I thought about that for a moment. It was a fair question, and deserved a fair answer. "Because the line goes where the land says it goes," I said. "That's the only rule I've ever had for this work. If I start filing lines where someone else wants them, I'm not a surveyor, I'm a pen for hire." She was quiet for a time. Then she told me about running elk, not the whole of it, but the shape of it. How he had worked this ground through 7 hard winters before the land grant came through. How the combine had begun their boundary pressure the spring after he died, when they calculated she would be easier to move than he had been. How she had filed counter-objections at the county seat 3 times, and been told each time that the surveying record was clear. "The surveying record was not clear," I said. "It was wrong." She said nothing to that, but she stayed until the fire was low. I spent my 6th and 7th days closing the field record, a second complete traverse of the boundary line, independent measurements at every monument, a full sketch map with compass bearings and chain distances at each corner. It was the kind of record that makes a challenge very difficult to sustain. When I was done, I had 43 pages of field notes, 8 monument descriptions with physical condition noted, and a boundary line that ran exactly where the 1861 land grant said it ran, along the creek, 3/4 of a mile south of where the combine wanted it. I broke camp on the morning of the 8th day. Sina was at the creek with the horses. She watched me pack my kit without speaking. When I was saddled and ready, she said, "Will you file it true?" "Yes," I said. She nodded. Once, the way a person nods when they have heard an answer and are deciding whether it is worth the weight of the next thing they might say. Then she said, "I will not thank you yet." "You shouldn't," I said. "Not until it holds." I rode the 2 days to the county seat and filed my report on a Thursday morning. I set the field book and all 43 pages of notes on the county surveyor's desk and explained what I had found. He read the first 10 pages while I sat across from him. I watched his face change as he read. Not from dishonesty to honesty exactly, but from a man who had expected one thing to a man confronting another. The monument descriptions alone were enough. The grant blaze on the old lime tree was enough. The second independent traverse was enough. Crail's formal challenge came in 3 days later. The county surveyor's office reviewed the field record against the challenge and dismissed it in a week. The previous 3 reports were placed under review. I was asked to provide a deposition, which I did. The combine did not pursue the matter further. A land combine chooses its battles by the cost of fighting them, and a complete, cross-checked field record with 8 documented monuments is a very expensive battle. I had a new county mandate waiting on my desk when I came out of the deposition. Boundary work, 2 counties north. Good work, steady pay. I sat with it for a day. Then I rode back to the Broken Rim. It took me 3 days from the county seat. I came into Ashbone Flats from the South Rim in the late afternoon, the light going gold on the creek and the winter grass moving in a wind that smelled like snow. Sina's horses were in the low ground near the spring. Her chimney was going. I rode to the gate and stopped. She came out of the house after a few minutes and stood on the step, looking at me without expression. "The challenge was dismissed," I said. "The boundary holds." She said nothing for a moment. Then, "I know. The county clerk sent a letter." "Good," I said. Another silence. She waited. "I declined the next contract," I said. "The one north." She raised an eyebrow, just slightly. "I am a fair hand at fence work," I said. "And I know this ground." I thought, if you needed another pair of hands through the winter, I could be of use. I'm not asking for anything other than the work and a corner of the barn. You can send me off whenever you like. She looked at me for a long time with that level, measuring attention. I did not try to fill the silence. She had earned the right to take as long as she needed. "Come in," she said finally. "There is coffee." I did not move immediately. "You should know why I came back," I said. It's not only the work. I know why you came back, she said. I have been thinking about it for 3 weeks. Come in. I tied my horse at the post and went inside. I worked her land through that winter, and the winter that followed, fence lines, hay cutting, a new gate on the south pasture, a repair to the spring box that had been leaking since the previous autumn. She showed me the country the way Running Elk had shown her, which is to say, without ceremony. Here is the east wall drainage. Here is where the creek runs thin in August. Here is the pasture that goes last in a dry year and first in a wet one. I learned it the way I learn any ground, by walking it until it becomes legible. We talked in the evenings, across her fire, and later across mine, the distance between them shortening in the way distance shortens when two people stop measuring it and simply move. She told me about the first spring she had held the land alone, the combine riders on the south fence line, the county agent's third visit, the morning she had ridden to the county seat herself and come home to an empty answer. She told me without complaint, the way she told me most things, as information, offered plainly, so that I would understand the ground I was standing on. I told her about the 16 years I had worked alone, the county contracts, the towns I had passed through without stopping. A woman in Fort Bridges I had not been honest with and still regretted. The particular loneliness of a man who is good at precise work and has organized his life around it so thoroughly that he has forgotten to leave room for anything else. She listened the way she always listened, completely, without hurry, her eyes on the fire. In May, on a morning when the grass was coming in thick and the horses were restless with the new warmth, I told her that I wanted to stay past the season, that I wanted to stay in the way that means something different from a hired hand staying. She considered it for 2 days. She was not being slow, she was being thorough. I had come to understand that she made every decision with the same care she gave the land, no faster than it needed, no slower. On the second evening she came to where I was working the east fence and stood beside me while I set the last post. When I straightened, she said, "I have decided yes. Not because I need you here." "I know," I said. "Because I have decided you are worth the deciding," she said. "I have measured a great deal of land. I know how to read a monument, how to close a traverse, how to find a line in country that does not want to give one up. But I could not have told you, before that spring morning in the Broken Rim country, the precise location of the thing that makes a man want to be somewhere for the rest of his life. I know where it is now. It is 3/4 of a mile south of where the combine wanted their line. It is right where the land says it is.